These are not tips that I just randomly think will work. These are the actual things that I do and have done to be able to afford, an expensive hobby like photography. Hey, I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to my channel. I like to talk about all things photography, and today I'm sharing with you how I, on a limited budget, am able to afford to do photography. So if you're like me and you don't have all the money in the world to go blow on fancy gear and everything that your little photographer heart desires, then this video is for you, because I have so many tips about how you can get started with photography with a limited budget. Now, most of these tips are not in any particular order except for the first one. I really truly believe that this first tip is really crucial and does help with other tips, and I'll get to that as I get into those other tips, but the first tip is to use whatever you can get your hands on. So for myself, when I very first started in photography, the only thing that I had available to me was a very old vintage film camera that I got a sweet deal at a flea market on. The vendor owned like a storage unit, and when people defaulted on their storage fees, he got to keep everything. And so he would take the stuff to the flea market and sell it for really cheap, and that's how he would get his money back. So I was able to buy like a kit, and it was like a big box with mostly stuff I had no clue about because I had not started photography yet, but I knew I was interested. And the whole thing cost me like $100, which for me at the time, I was a young mom, I was going to school full time. $100 was actually quite a bit of money, but I knew that it was an investment if it was something that I really wanted to pursue. So it ended up working out. I got this vintage camera and I just shot photos like crazy. It was all that I wanted to do, was go out and take photos with this old camera. Now, this is back in the day, yes, I'm this old, before cell phones had cameras. If I had a phone with a camera back then, I probably would have skipped the flea market altogether, because my cell phone camera is actually really awesome, and there's lots of things that I could probably do with that alone. So even if all you have is the camera on your cell phone, absolutely get started with that. If you don't even have that, you could potentially borrow something from a friend or a family member or anybody that is willing to lend you any camera that they have. And this is really important just to get your foot in the door and start showing to yourself and to other people that this is something that you are really truly interested in. Once I had this vintage film camera and I was taking a ton of pictures of anything I possibly could, the people in my life started to take notice. And because of that, many times people would gift me photography related things, anything from books and educational things about how to do photography to actual gear and even a camera at one point. So being able to show people that this is something that you're really interested in just by using whatever you have will encourage other people to want to help and want to lend you things or buy you gifts. So don't be afraid if people are asking you, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want for your birthday? You can say, hey, I want photo gear, or maybe a gift certificate to a place that I can use towards photo gear, and add up a few gift certificates from a few different places or over a few couple of years. Whatever you can do to make that work. Asking for gifts or receiving gifts is another great way to get into photography without spending a lot of your own money. So this next tip is probably the biggest mindset tip that I'm going to give you, and it's really shifting your mind from thinking that you need to have really super awesome gear in order to take good photos. You don't have to buy the best of the best. You can get something that is just good quality and be able to go with that. And I've had to do this myself. I know there's lots of super sweet cameras out there that I would just love to get my hands on, but it's not practical for me to throw down thousands of dollars for these cameras. Instead, I can buy something that's all right and go with that. So especially when you're just first starting out, please keep in mind, you don't need to have the top camera or the most recent released buzz gear that's out there. Just get something that's practical and a decent quality and you'll be good to go. So my next tip is one of the ones that is benefited by the fact that you took whatever you had and you've already gotten started and you're kind of starting to prove to your friends and family that you're really keen on photography, and that is to barter or trade your services for whatever. And I did this specifically with an office chair. I had a computer and my setup and everything, but I didn't have a comfortable chair to be sitting in to edit all the time. So I put up on my Facebook, hey, anybody got an extra office chair lying around? I would love to trade a photo shoot in exchange for an office chair. And somebody I knew got a hold of me and said, yes, I would love to do a photo shoot and give you this chair in exchange. And that worked out really well for me because I had already been doing photos, I had gotten practice, and this person believed in me enough to give them good photos with what I had, and in exchange would give me what I needed. So for a couple hours in the afternoon, it worked out to be a pretty good exchange. I got a very new, decent, good quality office chair in exchange for a photo shoot. There was this point where the camera that I had, it was getting a little bit old and it was starting to glitch out and have issues. And I knew I was in a position where I was going to have to get a new camera at some point. Not necessarily upgrade because the quality was still decent and I wouldn't mind the same camera, but just a newer one. But definitely something that was able to function properly because it's still technology and sometimes these things die. So what I did was I started looking for contests. There's lots of contests online that people will reward cameras or camera gear. And so I would make a list of all of the contests that I could find and submit to them, enter them. Sometimes it's as easy as, an Instagram post where you have to tag 3 friends or whatever. And sometimes it's an actual photo contest where you have to submit an image. The camera that I currently use now is a camera that I won in a contest. And I entered the same contest for 3 years in a row because I just really wanted to win that new camera. And it was a more local contest, which I think really worked to my favor because instead of being like on Instagram and open to everybody in the entire world, the contest that I was entering was only open to people in the province that I live in Canada. So that really narrowed it down and made it a lot more accessible to me. Also, because I entered it 3 years in a row, I started to understand who was winning, and I was able each year to refine my submission, which was a photo submission, into what they were looking for. And so by the 3rd year, I was able to win the camera, and it came with a bag and a couple lenses, and it was a really, really sweet package that for myself, I probably never would have been able to go out and just purchase just 'cause. And that really was able to keep me going when my other gear was starting to fail me. So aside from cameras, there's other things that you have to buy, especially the stuff that I do. There's lots of props and wardrobe, and I keep that down by buying thrift store things. But when it comes to lights and computers and programs and stuff like that, I also have to pay for those things as well. And there's a couple of things that I do to be able to get other gear other than camera bodies. And the number one way that I get new lenses is through reward programs. So if you have any sort of Air Miles or store that you shop at a lot and they collect some kind of points and you add up all your rewards, in time you're able to use those reward points towards an actual item or something. And so over the course of a couple of years, I use my reward points to buy new lenses. And that is how I buy quality lenses virtually for nothing. I mean, aside from using my reward points, but it's not cash out of my pocket. Now, of course, there are lots of photographers out there that do have cash to just blow on the latest, greatest camera out there. And you don't want to miss out on that opportunity because lots of them will sell their decent used gear. And you can definitely get a deal on buying used camera gear. Lots of times these people just don't use it anymore. They're the kind of people that have the money to burn and they just want the latest and greatest. So go ahead, keep your eyes on like the classifieds, the Craigslist, the Kijiji, wherever you shop used, because you might be able to score something awesome there. And then, of course, my last tip is when you are kind of up and running in some capacity, maybe you're selling book covers like I do, or you're taking on photo shoots for friends and family, or whatever, and you start making a little bit of money with your photography work, go ahead and reinvest that money in yourself, in your photography. Because without your services and what you were doing, you wouldn't have had that money anyways. So go ahead, continue to get yourself set up. Maybe make a plan to use 50% for whatever, your bills, your life, get a pedicure, I don't know, and then put aside 50% towards reinvesting in your photography so that you can move forward with your gear and maybe upgrade in the future. And that's it. That is how I have been able to make my photography work on an extremely tight budget. I hardly ever pay for things out of my pocket, very rarely. And if it is, it's usually the reinvesting money that I've made tactic, where I actually have sold a book cover or something and then taken that money to purchase something for my photography work. There ain't no shame in, buying budget gear, buying something used, or entering contests or using reward points. If you are really truly passionate about it, don't let the gear hold you back. You can use whatever you get your hands on. I hope you guys are feeling so inspired and ready to go out there and start finding ways to really invest in yourself and your photography and get out there and start shooting. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you like to learn more about creative photography, and check out the videos I have on my end screen.